This diagram maps a common psychological trap. On one side, a stagnant current state. On the other, massive ambitions, like building a business or traveling. The rotating rings represent specific doubts, lack of money, connections, or fear that keep the two worlds separated. Vishal lived in the center of that diagram. He filled notebooks with business ideas, but lacked the internal certainty to start them. To avoid the risk of failing on his own terms, he accepted a role in the merchant navy. It was a choice based on safety and the expectations of others, rather than his own vision. The safety of that choice came with a hidden cost. Vishal spent months in isolation, working grueling night shifts on the open sea. He was exhausted and away from his family, yet he stayed. He told himself that a steady paycheck was better than nothing, using survival as an excuse to ignore his original dreams. This sense of comfort is often a mask for stagnation. By settling for a life that is merely good enough, you effectively pause your own development. You remain in this vacuum until an external force makes staying there impossible. For Vishal, that force arrived as a massive cyclone between Indonesia and Australia. In the middle of the night, a wave hit the cargo ship with enough power to flood the lower decks almost instantly. As the ship sank, the career path and the predictable income Vishal had relied on disappeared into the ocean. The safety net he had spent years maintaining was destroyed in a matter of minutes. He woke up alone on the shore of a small deserted island. He had no tools, no crew, and no instructions. He was forced to confront the reality of his situation without any of the modern buffers he used to rely on. This illustrates a harsh principle of growth. If you refuse to leave your comfort zone voluntarily, life will eventually eject you from it by force. Vishal's first instinct was to play the victim. He spent hours asking why this was happening to him, realizing his previous identity as a passive sailor was useless here. On this island, there was no captain to give him orders, and no paycheck for simply showing up. While searching for food, he found a weathered wooden box containing a single notebook. It was a survival guide written by a previous castaway, detailing how to find water and hunt for fish on this specific island. This is the accidental apprenticeship. Guidance rarely arrives through a formal teacher. Instead, it often appears as a book, a failure, or a total stranger that collides with your path and forces you to learn a new way of operating. Vishal followed the guide's instructions. He learned to identify specific coconut trees for water and how to strike stones to create fire. For the first time, the responsibility for his life was entirely his own. Transformation began the moment he stopped complaining about his environment and started accepting the lessons it was offering. The learning process was grueling. Every fire started with blistered hands and hours of physical friction. Vishal had to overcome his own physical exhaustion to secure even the most basic necessities. This forced him into what is known as a portfolio life. He could no longer identify as just one thing. He had to be a builder for his shelter, a fisherman for his food, and a strategist to manage his dwindling energy. This diversification of skills creates the mental architecture required to thrive in a chaotic world. While a single-point identity breaks under pressure, a network of competencies absorbs shock. As he mastered these roles, Vishal's self-belief grew. He began inventing tools that weren't in the guide. The daily struggle was building a foundation of confidence that his previous life had never required. A resilient identity is forged by mastering multiple, difficult disciplines under the pressure of absolute necessity. Eventually, Vishal built a sturdy shelter near the shore and established a reliable routine. He felt he had finally conquered the island and secured his future. Then a tsunami hit. The waves obliterated his shelter and washed his tools into the ocean. Though he felt despair, he realized he now possessed the skills to rebuild. He started over, making the new structure even more resilient. But then came the second disaster. A lightning bolt struck his primary food source, a coconut tree he relied on for weekly calories. The tree ignited, burning his entire food supply to the ground in minutes. This was his breaking point. Vishal collapsed, believing that every effort he made would be met with a new, crueler form of destruction. He fell asleep convinced he would not survive the week. Vishal viewed the burning tree as his final defeat. He was focused on the loss of his food, unable to see the mechanical reality of what that fire was actually doing. The next morning, a ship's horn woke him. A rescue vessel was sitting just off the coast, sending a boat to retrieve him. This graph illustrates the mechanical irony of his rescue. The captain told Vishal they saw a massive signal fire on the island the night before. The burning coconut tree, the event Vishal thought was his death sentence, was the exact beacon that led to his salvation. Vishal returned home as a different man. The timid person who had outsourced his decisions to others was gone. He was now a disciplined survivor who knew exactly how to operate under pressure. He used his portfolio life identity to build the businesses he had once only dreamed about. He wrote a book, became a source of inspiration for millions, and traveled the world as a creator rather than a passenger. The events on the island served a specific function. They dismantled a fragile identity and replaced it with a resilient one. Vishal's story is a literal representation of the framework Jeff Goins outlines in The Art of Work. Goins argues that life's hardships are not random roadblocks. They are an intentional curriculum designed to force the development of the specific skills you need for your ultimate direction. This animation shows the isolated, painful skills of a portfolio life fusing into a single cohesive purpose. Your life's work is rarely found through comfort. It is the result of integrating the difficult, forced lessons learned during your most challenging moments. Stop viewing your setbacks or the storms in your career as proof of failure. Instead of cursing the storm for what it destroyed, look at the skills it is forcing you to learn. That is where your future is being built.